The desert sun had barely begun to etch heat into the asphalt when Private First Class Mara Sullivan stepped off the transport van. The vehicle's brakes hissed in protest as she swung her duffel over one shoulder, boots crunching against the gravel, the sound reverberating in the empty early morning air. Around her, the base stretched like a labyrinth of sand, steel, and concrete, barracks rising in monotonous rows, obstacle courses curling like metal snakes, firing ranges sprawled under a sky that burned gold even at this hour. The other recruits spilled out, voices rough with sleep and excitement, their complaints about the heat and early hour bouncing off walls that had witnessed thousands of footsteps before them. Mara, by contrast, moved with a kind of deliberate calm that seemed almost alien. Every motion calculated, precise, economical. Nothing wasted. Nothing left to chance. Her squad noticed immediately, whereas the others laughed at the heat, at the early hour, at the absurdity of dragging themselves through a world that didn't care. Mara didn't respond. She didn't glance at the rising sun. She didn't measure her peers with sidelong glances or engage in idle chatter. She simply walked, keeping her eyes forward, absorbing the world with the quiet, patient attention of someone who had already survived far worse than this. By the time the van rolled away, leaving only dust in its wake, whispers had already begun to snake through the squad. "Who does she think she is?" one soldier muttered, wiping sleep from his eyes. "She's going to get someone killed," said another, shaking his head. Their words didn't reach her ears, and if they had, she would have treated them as background noise, insignificant, transient, not worth the energy. The barracks awaited. Mara slipped through the steel doors, the smell of industrial soap and decades of sweat clinging to the air. She chose a bunk at the back corner, nearest the emergency exit, with a clear line of sight to the main door. Her fellow recruits dropped onto their cots, sprawled across beds, bodies too loud, too alive, too unaware. Mara set her bag down, methodically arranging its contents. Uniform folded, boots polished, weapon components lined up like surgical instruments. Everything in its place. Everything ready. At chow, the same pattern emerged. Mara sat alone near the windows, tray organized with precise efficiency, eyes scanning the room in a rhythm that seemed almost unconscious. Across the hall, Lieutenant Caldwell held court with the kind of confidence that demanded attention. Perfect uniform, perfect posture, perfect teeth. Surrounding him, a trio of recruits nodded eagerly, drinking in his every word. The conversation was casual, the jokes sharp, the laughter edged with superiority. Mara passed by without acknowledgement, tray empty, gaze forward, filing their faces away like data points, each a potential threat or variable to be accounted for. Her first test came at the rifle range. The commands were familiar, the cadence drilled into every recruit since basic training. Shooters, you have 30 rounds, 10 targets, 3 minutes. Make ready on the firing line. Mara approached her lane deliberately, checked her weapon, and raised it with perfect form. The other soldiers erupted into controlled chaos. Bolts slammed home, safety selectors clicked, rounds cracked through the air. Targets jerked under impact, brass arcing against the early light. And Mara, she stood, rifle up, sight picture perfect, finger nowhere near the trigger. A heartbeat passed, then another, and then she lowered the weapon, calmly, deliberately, as if ignoring the command altogether. The range instructor's jaw tightened. "Private Sullivan, are you planning on shooting today? Or just enjoying the scenery?" "Not enjoying, Sergeant," she replied, voice even, matter of fact. "Awaiting my cue." She had no intention of rushing. Precision, not speed. Observation, not reaction. When the whistle finally blew, signaling the ceasefire, her target was untouched, pristine, unmarred, the kind of clean slate that made the instructors shift uncomfortably. Only then did she engage, moving with a fluidity that made the rest of the squad look like amateurs scrambling through their motions. Whispers of disbelief spread down the firing line. Some soldiers glanced at her with suspicion, others with grudging awe, though no one dared speak her name aloud. The obstacle course tested strength and endurance, separating those who had the stamina from those who only thought they did. Mara started at the same deliberate pace, steady, unhurried, eyes calculating the wall, the ropes, the sand. The first challenge was a vertical climb, 8 feet high, demanding a blend of speed and technique. Her squad mates surged ahead, muscles taut, body straining, adrenaline pumping. Mara approached, paused for 3 seconds, then sat cross-legged at the base of the wall, closing her eyes. "Private, move," Mendes shouted, frustration crackling in his tone. She didn't respond. The stopwatch ticked on. Around them, the course unfolded in a blur of sweat, curses, and grit. Soldiers vaulted over walls, slid through sand, crawled under obstacles, every movement desperate, every heartbeat urgent. Mara remained seated, eyes closed, breathing controlled, the epitome of calm amidst chaos. 15 minutes later, she stood, dusted herself off, and rejoined the formation as if nothing had happened. By now, nicknames had stuck. Sleepwalker, Nap Queen. Mara's peers used them with derision, though behind her back there was uncertainty, a flicker of respect hiding beneath the veneer of mockery. Yet she didn't react. She never defended herself. She never justified her actions. Every step, every movement, every choice was calculated, controlled, unseen. The urban combat simulation awaited next. Buildings made of plywood and steel, alleys narrow enough to be lethal, stairwells twisting, corners hiding threats in every shadow. Weapons loaded, simunition primed, the squad assembled. Lieutenant Caldwell gave the briefing. Hostage rescue scenario, unknown number of hostiles, civilian role players scattered. Success required speed, precision, and calm under fire. Failure meant casualties and humiliation. As the whistle blew, Mendes surged ahead, ram swinging. Owen moved to cover. Larson checked the rear. Mara followed last, weapon raised, eyes scanning corners, angles, potential. Reeds. And then she stopped, slid into a corner, and closed her eyes. Chaos erupted around her. Alarm screamed. Paint rounds spattered. Shouts pierced the air. Squad mates fell in simulated defeat, mistakes multiplying. Yet Mara remained still, composed, silent. Outside, Master Sergeant Ortiz observed with growing concern. 2 weeks of this pattern, and he was beginning to wonder if Mara was beyond salvaging. Every exercise, every attempt, she appeared disengaged, indifferent, yet methodical. Then, without warning, the black SUV arrived. Tinted windows, government plates, engine purring through the gate, commanding attention without effort. Commander Elias Rourke stepped out. Late 40s, weathered, deliberate, every motion economical, trained for survival in a world few had seen. He approached the observation post without ceremony, scanning the field with eyes that missed nothing. "Sergeant Ortiz," he said, "I understand we have Private Sullivan in the rotation." "Yes, sir. She's in the middle of evaluation," Ortiz replied cautiously. "I'd like to observe one final scenario," Rourke said. "No judgment, no interference. Just watch." Inside Building Alpha, the simulation unfolded predictably. Role players popped up, paint rounds flying, alarms blaring, squad mates falling one by one. And Mara sat in her corner, eyes closed, breathing steady, oblivious to the chaos. "Private Sullivan." Rourke's voice cut through the din, sharp and unyielding. "Recall mode. Execute." Her eyes snapped open. The lethargy vanished. Muscle memory surged through her. Weapon raised, movements precise, fluid, unstoppable. Room by room, threat by threat, she moved like a force of nature, executing with surgical precision. 2 minutes in, the hostage was secured. The squad watched, stunned, disbelief written on every face. Mara's transformation was instantaneous, undeniable, and awe-inspiring. The room smelled of sawdust and paint, acrid with the remnants of simulated gunfire. Mara Sullivan didn't flinch. Every motion she made was deliberate, economical, almost surgical. Her eyes flicked to every corner, every shadow, every potential threat vector with the precision of someone who had memorized hundreds of combat zones before this very moment. Lieutenant Caldwell sprawled on the floor, helmet smeared with paint, disbelief etched across his face. Mendes and Larson peeked from behind obstacles, hesitating, unsure of how to react. Owen froze, chest pounding, hands gripping his weapon like it might betray him. And Mara flowed through the chaos, calm, composed, unstoppable. Two role players appeared at once, emerging from doorways that should have provided them cover. Mara didn't hesitate. Both were neutralized with clean, controlled movements before either could react. Each step she took was measured, a rhythm perfectly synchronized with the simulation's environment. The squad's prior ridicule, the whispers, the mockery, the disbelief, had evaporated in an instant, replaced by a mixture of awe and terror. Her quiet professionalism contrasted sharply with the frantic energy of her teammates, highlighting a difference that was more than skill. It was almost instinct. Outside the observation window, Master Sergeant Ortiz and Commander Elias Rourke watched in silence. Notes had become irrelevant. Stopwatches hung forgotten. The transformation was undeniable. Every recruit in the simulation had their performance shattered not by physical fatigue, but by Mara's presence, by the precision and forethought she had exhibited. This was more than skill. It was artistry masked as lethargy for 2 weeks, a silent testament to control, discipline, and mastery. In the upstairs room, a third role player attempted to flank the squad. He had no chance. Mara anticipated the angle, predicted the movement, neutralized the threat before it became a danger. Every shot, every movement, every calculation flowed from her experience, from a mental and physical conditioning that no ordinary soldier could replicate. The squad's prior bravado dissolved into wide-eyed uncertainty. They had spent days mocking her, watching her sleep through exercises, assuming incompetence, assuming weakness. And now they were witnessing the stark, undeniable reality. She had been playing an entirely different game. The debrief later was tense, quiet, almost reverent. Mara sat disassembled, rifle meticulously cleaned. Every component clicked into place, with exacting care. Rourke and Ortiz studied her, trying to reconcile the years of apparent dormancy with the sudden, flawless execution they had just witnessed. "Recall protocol," Rourke finally said, breaking the silence. She wasn't asleep. She wasn't disengaged. She was contained, conditioned to suppress response until given explicit authorization. Ortiz leaned back, arms crossed, digesting the implications. "You're saying that for 2 weeks, she could have been operational but wasn't because someone didn't give the order?" Rourke nodded. "Exactly. This is standard for our recall operatives. Suppression isn't failure, it's control. It's survival. It prevents activation in inappropriate circumstances." The explanation, clinical and precise, did little to soothe the incredulity of the team watching the footage again and again. For the recruits, for the instructors, for Lieutenant Caldwell and the rest of Mara's squad, the revelation reshaped everything they thought they knew. The person who had seemed indifferent, lethargic, and perhaps a liability had been operating under conditions no one in that room could fully understand. And now, freed by the right authorization, she had become the standard against which all others would be measured. Later that evening, the barracks were different. The chatter that once filled the hall with mockery and bravado was replaced with a wary quiet. The squad that had whispered derision now exchanged glances, unsure of how to reconcile the person they had underestimated with the force they had just witnessed. Caldwell approached Mara at her bunk, helmet in hand, uncertain, awkward, carrying the weight of both apology and awe. "Private Sullivan," he began, voice hesitant. "We didn't understand. We didn't realize." Mara looked up, eyes calm, measured, her expression betraying nothing but professionalism. "You weren't supposed to," she said simply. "You weren't authorized to know." The weight of those words sank in slowly. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't defiance. It was quiet authority, the kind earned through experiences and missions most people would never live through. Her demeanor demanded respect, not admiration. It demanded acknowledgement of competence, not attempts to belittle or provoke. Over the next few days, Mara's integration into the squad shifted subtly. Where mockery had once dominated, uncertainty now lingered. Her teammates studied her differently, watching movements, noting precision, trying to reconcile two identities: the sleepwalker they had mocked and the lethal professional who had just demonstrated mastery. Every drill, every movement was now viewed through the lens of this new reality. The contrast between Mara and her peers was stark. Where others expended energy in haste, she conserved, observed, calculated. Where others acted first and analyzed later, she analyzed first and acted with precision. The urban combat exercises continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Mara's presence was no longer a source of irritation. It was a variable that could not be ignored. The instructors began modifying scenarios, testing both her abilities and those of her squad in tandem, forcing every soldier to operate at a higher level simply to keep pace. Mara's calm in the face of orchestrated chaos became the standard around which all exercises were judged. Her performance was no longer about individual success. It set the bar for collective efficiency, teaching lessons in patience, observation, and calculated action that the squad would carry forward indefinitely. One evening, Ortiz and Rourke reviewed the final simulation footage. Mara had moved through multiple rooms, securing hostages, neutralizing threats, and navigating complex, multi-layered ambushes with an elegance that bordered on artistic. Every movement had purpose, every shot precise, every decision executed with a clarity that seemed almost preternatural. Yet the transformation had not been dramatic for show. It had been methodical, controlled, professional. No ego, no flair, just action, results, and consequence. Rourke leaned back, voice quiet, almost reflective. "She's not just good," he said. "She's exceptional. The kind of operator that exists at the intersection of conditioning, experience, and absolute discipline. We just saw a glimpse of what she's capable of. Most people will never see this." Ortiz nodded slowly, understanding dawning. 2 weeks of apparent indifference, and she was the single variable none of U.S. accounted for. And now she defines what operational success looks like in this unit. Meanwhile, Mara remained unchanged. She finished cleaning her weapon, folded her uniform with meticulous care, and moved through the routine of base life with the same measured calm she had displayed from the beginning. There was no boastfulness, no attempt to assert superiority. Every action was functional, every movement deliberate. She existed within the framework of professional efficiency, the quiet force that ensured operational stability, unassailable, unannounced, and utterly competent. By the time the final evaluations were completed, Mara's squad and the instructors alike had shifted perception entirely. The nicknames Sleepwalker, Nap Queen, had faded into awkward silence. Where mockery had once filled the room, respect now lingered. The squad recognized that the rules had changed. They were no longer interacting with a perceived weak link, but a benchmark for performance. And yet, Mara remained quiet. She did not flaunt her skill. She did not seek recognition. She was content with precision, with control, with effectiveness. Her purpose was operational, not personal. Her actions spoke louder than words, and in the confines of military discipline, that was sufficient. Graduation day arrived with a quiet intensity. The barracks were alive with nervous energy. Recruits straightening uniforms, adjusting gear, rehearsing protocols in hushed tones. Mara Sullivan stood in formation, expression unreadable, posture impeccable. The sun bore down, casting long shadows across the concrete, yet she remained unflinching. Around her, squad mates shifted, glances flicking toward the person who had changed their understanding of competence, calm, and control in just a matter of weeks. Some were still uncertain, some still afraid, but all recognized a truth they couldn't unsee. Mara was not ordinary. Lieutenant Caldwell approached her again, this time with a different demeanor. No derision, no awkward apologies, only respect mingled with a flicker of lingering disbelief. "Private Sullivan," he said quietly, "I underestimated you, and I won't make that mistake again." Mara nodded, the gesture simple, acknowledging, not forgiving, not gloating, not needing affirmation. The quiet authority she carried made words almost unnecessary. Instructors filed past, checking names off lists, administering last-minute evaluations. Their eyes lingered longer than usual on Mara, the student who had redefined their expectations. They whispered quietly among themselves, discussing her skill, her calm, her uncanny ability to observe, calculate, and execute with unshakable precision. Every movement she made was a study in efficiency, every glance a lesson in situational awareness. No one could claim they hadn't seen it coming. They had merely not expected it to unfold in real time, in such dramatic contrast to 2 weeks of perceived dormancy. The debrief with Master Sergeant Ortiz and Commander Rourke came last, small and private, away from the prying eyes of other recruits and instructors. They sat in the windowless room, the air faintly tinged with disinfectant and gun oil, reviewing footage from the final evaluation. Mara sat quietly, disassembled rifle in hand, the pieces laid out methodically as if the act itself were ritual. Rourke finally broke the silence. "You understand what you did out there, don't you?" he asked. Mara's eyes met his, calm, steady, precise. "Yes, sir. Controlled, contained, executed as trained." "Exactly," Rourke said, leaning back. "Controlled, contained, executed. Most people would have panicked. Most people would have tried too hard, overreacted, or made errors in judgment. You didn't, and that's what sets you apart. The discipline, the patience, the execution under stress, those aren't just skills. They're a mindset, and you've proven it." Ortiz nodded, processing everything. 2 weeks of apparent indifference, and yet, every single element of the simulation played out according to your plan. Every angle anticipated. Every threat neutralized. The discipline required for that is extraordinary. Mara lowered her head slightly, methodically clicking the final component of her weapon into place. "It's what we're trained to do, sir. The activation phrase, that's the key. Until I'm authorized, I maintain containment. Nothing else matters. Once given permission, execution." Rourke allowed a faint smile to cross his face. "Exactly. And now that you've proven your capacity, your place isn't here as a student. It's as an instructor, passing on what you know, teaching others to understand the importance of patience, observation, and precise execution under pressure. People like you've earned the right to teach, not just perform." Mara's lips curved in a subtle, almost imperceptible acknowledgement. She understood the gravity of the assignment, the responsibility it entailed, the chance to mold others, to teach discipline under duress, to ensure the next generation of operatives understood the balance of patience and action. This was her new mission. When the paperwork was finalized, Mara was reassigned to the Advanced Training Command, joining the cadre of Special Operations instructors. The transition was seamless, professional, as if she had always belonged there. The squad she left behind carried the knowledge of her capabilities forward. They moved differently, thought differently, operated with a new understanding of what true competence looked like in the field. Mara's influence extended beyond her own actions, shaping behaviors, expectations, and perceptions for everyone who had the fortune or misfortune of witnessing her skills firsthand. Yet Mara remained unchanged. She did not flaunt her expertise. She did not seek recognition. She existed in quiet efficiency, a professional performing professional duties. Her presence was felt in subtle ways, a corrected stance, a refined movement, an observed mistake addressed before it became a problem. Her teaching was not loud, not performative. It was precise, deliberate, impactful. Each lesson, each observation, each correction a reflection of years spent surviving in environments most could never imagine. Her story became legend within the command, not for drama, not for ego, not for spectacle, but for the truth it represented. Appearances can be deceiving. Quiet professionals often carry skills that remain invisible until the right moment, until the right command, until the proper authorization. Mara had moved through a world of chaos without ever drawing attention. Yet in the critical moment, she became unstoppable. Her peers, her students, and her instructors carried that lesson forward, understanding that true capability is measured not by outward displays, but by the depth of preparation, control, and discipline. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the training grounds, Mara Sullivan walked through the barracks, one last time as a student. Faces that had once mocked her now regarded her with a mixture of respect, awe, and something approaching fear. She did not react, did not smile, did not engage. She simply moved, efficient, deliberate, present, and unseen. Outside, Commander Rourke departed in his black SUV, leaving Mara and the cadre to their work, a silent reminder that some of the most important battles are fought quietly, expertly, and away from the eyes of the world. In the days and months that followed, Mara became a teacher of precision, patience, and observation. Her story spread quietly among those in the know. She became the standard against which recruits measured themselves, the benchmark of controlled excellence, the reminder that lethargy can mask lethality, and that the most dangerous individuals are often the ones who reveal themselves only when the moment demands. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the base, her former squad reflected on what they had witnessed, how easily they had misjudged her, how narrowly they had failed to recognize the latent power lying dormant under the surface. Mara Sullivan had been underestimated, contained, and finally unleashed. And those who had observed her understood the immutable truth. The wolf doesn't announce itself to the sheep. It waits, silent, patient, lethal, and only acts when the time is right. The lesson endured long after graduation. Appearances are deceiving. Quiet professionalism is formidable. And true mastery, as Mara had demonstrated, is revealed not in constant action, but in the disciplined restraint that allows for explosive precision at the exact moment it is required. The world outside the base would never know her story, and that was the way it was meant to be. The silent power of Mara Sullivan would continue to shape others quietly, effectively, and forever unseen.